hopefully there'll be a few more to come down the line.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's because of you that we're proud to be the People's Channel. It's because of you that we are Britain's news channel.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
Practice Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching State of the Nation tonight right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin, on tonight's show. Labour has been in power for 1 year, 365 days, yet they are well behind in the opinion polls. The red wall looks set to be turning turquoise as Nigel Farage and Reform, according to a new bombshell poll, are surging. A report reveals the Home Office has not got a clue as to how many immigrants are overstaying their visas, or indeed how many are working illegally in our economy. We're going to be talking about that tonight. And Jeremy Corbyn has launched a brand new hard left party. Could this spell disaster for Keir Starmer and indeed hand a big boost to Nigel Farage? Plus, is France finally stepping up to help stop the small boat crossings, which of course are at record highs? Or is this all one big PR stunt ahead of President Macron's state visit? That State of the Nation starts right now. Now I'll be joined tonight by my panel, trade unionist and political commentator Andy Twelves and columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku. As ever, let me know your views tonight at gbnews.com/you'll say. Of course, you can reach us on X at GB News. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much. Palestine Action is set to be banned after a High Court judge refused to temporarily block it being designated as a terror group. Hada Amouri, the co-founder of Palestine Action, asked the High Court to temporarily block the government from banning the group as a terrorist organisation before a potential legal challenge against the decision to prescribe it under the Terrorism Act. She said her lawyers will seek an urgent appeal to prevent what she called a dystopian nightmare. The move is set to come into force at midnight after a High Court judge refused Ms Amouri's bid for a temporary block. A brawl filmed at Manchester Airport last summer followed an attack on a member of the public at Starbucks, the jury has heard today. Brothers Mohammed Fahir Amaz, who's 20, and Mohammed Ahmad, who's 26, are said to have used a high level of violence in assaulting 3 police officers in Terminal 2 on the 23rd of July last year. Police were at the airport responding to an earlier incident at the Starbucks cafe where Mr Amaz headbutted a man and punched him, Liverpool Crown Court heard today. Both brothers from Rochdale in Greater Manchester deny the allegations and claim self-defence. A group of MPs say the government doesn't know what happens to foreign workers when their visas expire. The Public Accounts Committee, which examines the value for money of government projects, claims the Home Office has failed to analyse exit checks since the skilled worker visa route was introduced in 2020, so doesn't know how many have stayed illegally. Around 1.2 million people applied under the scheme in the wake of Brexit. Officials are said to be reliant on information from airlines to cross-reference exits from the UK. The Home Office, though, has said that it's strengthening its checks. Jeremy Corbyn says discussions are ongoing over the formation of a new political party after Zara Sultana announced she was quitting Labour to co-lead one alongside him. In a statement on social media, the independent MP for Islington North says real change is coming. This Labour government has refused to deliver the change people expected and deserved. Miss Sultana, who represents Coventry South, was one of 7 Labour MPs who lost the party whip last summer for backing a move to scrap the 2-child benefit cap. The deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper, said it's indicative of the public's dissatisfaction with the 2 main parties. And former Arsenal player Thomas Partey has been charged with rape by the Metropolitan Police Service. The 32-year-old has been charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. 2 counts of rape relate to 1 woman, 3 counts of rape relate to a second woman, and 1 count of sexual assault relates to a third. The offences are reported to have taken place between 2021 and 2022. Partey's lawyer said he denies all the charges against him, adding he now welcomes the opportunity to finally clear his name. He's due to appear in court on the 5th of August. And those are the latest headlines. For now, more news from me in an hour.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight, right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Well, yesterday I laid bare Sir Keir Starmer's ever-growing catalogue of U-turns, broken promises and out-and-out failures. And it seems even Downing Street cannot find anything to celebrate. They've quietly admitted that there are no plans for a party to mark the occasion. No champagne corks are being popped in number 10 today. Nothing apparently is being loaned from Lord Ali. And the public is not buying it either. A fresh opinion poll, bombshell poll, shows that Labour would hemorrhage 233 seats if we went to the polls today. An absolutely damning verdict on a government that spent 12 months ignoring the issues that matter most of all to the British people, with immigration, of course, consistently topping the list of concerns for voters. It seems Keir Starmer is destined to follow in the footsteps of Labour Prime Minister Clement Attlee, a premiership that also started with a landslide election, but of course mired in economic uncertainty and internal conflict, failed to win a second term. And who is topping this new YouGov poll? None other than the political insurgency led by Nigel Farage and Reform UK, representing the most significant political insurgency in this country since the initial rise of the Labour Party in the early 20th century. And it is, of course, sending shockwaves across Westminster. Labour's once reliable red wall heartlands are turning turquoise. Indeed, on current polling, Labour would lose more seats in the red wall to Reform than Labour lost to Boris Johnson in 2019. Decades of loyalty have been thrown away by a Labour leadership utterly out of touch with its traditional voters on everything from the small boat crossings to two-tier justice. It should be a wake-up call for Keir Starmer and Labour MPs. But instead, this Labour government ploughs on, blind to the crisis at our borders. This year alone, over 20,000 illegal migrants have crossed the channel in the small boats, the highest ever, up 50% on last year, up about 80% on 2 years ago. But it isn't just voters here who have noticed Reform UK's rise. Across the Atlantic, Donald Trump's Vice President, J.D. Vance, has reportedly asked Britain's own Lord Mandelson about Nigel Farage's growing popularity. The second most powerful man in America is clearly taking note not only of our free speech crisis, which he asked Keir Starmer about in the Oval Office a few months ago, but what is happening on our shores right now. Reform UK is not just rattling Keir Starmer's team, it's catching the eyes of the White House. So as Reform continues to surge, we have to ask, are we now actually witnessing the biggest political upset of modern times? Because after 12 months of Labour in power, it's clear one thing has changed. Millions of voters are looking for something completely different. Well, to discuss all of this, I'm joined now by Conservative Party peer and polling analyst, Lord Robert Hayward. Lord Hayward, I've just suggested we're witnessing the most significant insurgency since the rise of the Labour Party in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Would you share that analysis?
Yes, I would. What we're seeing is a massive shift. It was shown, first of all, at the general election, where people just didn't want the Conservative government. They voted to get rid of it. They didn't vote for anything. And in fact, large numbers of people stayed away from the polls at the last election. Huge drop in turnout. So yes, we are seeing a massive shift. How it finishes up, of course, we won't know until a general election several years hence. But at this point, we are seeing a very, very substantial change in people's political views.
Now, when we look at this map, which is dominated by turquoise, with Reform doing very well in lots of traditional Labour areas, including Wales, the Red Wall, North East England, as well as those strongholds in Kent and Essex, what do we actually know about where Farage is pulling most of his support from when we look into the detail of the polling?
Well, you've identified there in your comments the strongest basis of the Reform vote, but while I'm identifying its strongest base, I'm not saying it is the sole base. What one would regard as the traditional white working class people from the East, West Midlands, from, as you say, industrial Wales and the North East. And that's where Nigel Farage is pulling his support from, but also from the Tories in the home counties like Essex and Kent and the like. Having said that, the poll that we're discussing has been taken over a number of weeks. And in the last few, they got Nigel Farage and Reform got a big boost on May the 1st. But in the last few weeks, there's a slight tapering of that surge for Reform. And yesterday...
Although at the same time, we've also had polling in the last couple of weeks, that have got the Conservatives down on 15%. So is there any way back for what was traditionally the dominant centre-right party?
There's no
in
question.
British
It's
politics?
going to be very, very difficult because the Tories, as you say, are at a very low figure. But on yesterday, Thursday, Reform had the job of defending their first 2 ever council by-elections, and they lost both of them. One in Newark, in Robert Jenrick's constituency in Newark West. They lost back to the Conservatives, having won it on May the 1st. And in Durham, they lost a seat, which they also took on May the 1st. But on this occasion, having taken it from the Labour Party, they lost it to the Liberal Democrats. So there's no question, Reform are in a very strong position, but there are question marks beginning to appear about the scale of that surge.
And Lord Hayward, why we have you, just briefly, if you can, we're getting news, obviously, about this new hard left party with Jeremy Corbyn being involved. How do you see that impacting on Labour's vote? We're going to discuss this in more detail later on in the show, but while you're here, can we just get your headline view on that?
It'll be very disruptive to what is already a weakened Labour Party. The polling figures they've got at the moment are not as bad as the Tories, but they're bad. This week will show up next week and the week after as probably hitting Labour even harder. And then you're going to start measuring what one would fairly describe as the Corbynite party hitting Labour even further.
Indeed. Well, thank you for your time this evening, Lord Robert Hayward. We really appreciate it. I'm joined now by my panel, trade unionist and political commentator Andy Twelves and columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Andy, what do you make of this Reform dominance, continuing dominance in the polls? Lord Hayward there saying maybe a little bit of evidence is starting to taper a little bit. Still a long way to go for the general election. The flip side, of course, to that is a year ago at the general election, Reform got 14.3%. It is now averaging 30%. I can't remember a point in my lifetime where we've seen something as significant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when UKIP was at its height as that kind of insurgent right-wing party, they weren't controlling councils like this. They didn't have this kind of level of electoral success. But I think Lord Hayward did make a good point about these council by-elections. It was Reform's first council defence, one in Newark, one in Durham, on Nottinghamshire County Council and Durham County Council, and they lost pretty resoundingly. I think it's because, it's been, 64 days since May the 1st? What have the Reform councils been doing? They put a 18-year-old Leicester University student in charge of Warwickshire County Council. They're arguing in Kent about pride flags, and they've decided to go to war with the chief executive about pride flags because that's really the biggest issue in Kent right now.
In fairness,
I think
though,
a lot of Reform voters voted for Reform because they don't feel listened to. They don't feel like the mainstream parties are addressing the issues that matter in their communities. But I think when Reform have gotten into these council positions, they're not actually addressing the issues.
Well, in fairness, Reform would say they've also pointed to an enormous amount of waste, if not fraud, in lots of these local councils. We've seen the Doge unit reveal, for example. We had them on this week. In fact, we had them on State of the Nation, revealing big contracts of £160,000 plus going to inclusivity training. We'll come back to this point if you want to pick up on it. Esther Kraku, what are we seeing in the polling? What is catching your eye with this YouGov MRP and with the general landscape?
Well, I mean, one thing we have to remember is that 4 years away from a general election, we do have to be careful with our expectations. But Reform is making massive gains, and it's kind of a nightmare for both the left and the right. So on the right, they're not really going down the very Tory economic side of things. They're actually talking mainly about immigration. And on the left side of things, they're talking about, more sort of nationalist policies national socialist policies like renationalising industry and things to do to really encourage or revive industry, which is something that you would typically expect from a left of centre party. So they're trying to outflank the Labour and Conservative Party on both fronts, and then you have Nigel Farage on the culture stuff talking about being proud to be British,
winter
British
fuel
history.
Payments too.
That was a complete blunder. One thing I will say about Reform is they've been very clever to put the pressure on the Labour Party, so much so that you don't even notice that a lot of the frustration within the party is from the far left or the hard left. So you would think that the Labour Party would be edging more to the left of its own party, but actually Nigel Farage has kind of pushed them to talk about things and to focus on issues that are not typical of Keir Starmer's lot. And so we're going to have to see if that's actually successful, because again, there's still 4 years left.
Andy, how does Labour actually manage this Reform correct? Because we're going to talk about this later on. I don't want to get into the Corbyn hard left stuff now, but Labour, you look at that map, the YouGov MRP, the turquoise is especially pronounced across Labour areas. It's revealing, isn't it, that Farage isn't even talking about the Conservatives anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm from one of those post-industrial towns that has been Labour for generations and probably would go Reform if there was an election today. And I think the way that the Labour Party can kind of combat this Reform wave, I'd actually disagree with Esther in saying, it's pushing the Labour Party into places where they're not comfortable or stuff they don't talk about. They should be talking about these things because they used to.
Well, but that's the thing. It's an identity crisis. They should be talking about it.
When it was like pre-Blair Labour, when it was, truly working class people leading the Labour Party, they were talking about civic nationalism, having pride in your community, ensuring there were those community standards, having jobs for your kids, having affordable housing. I think it is just getting back to that traditional Labour to appeal to just normal people.
Well, at this point, it's just two issues, and whichever party gets there first wins. It's immigration and the economy. If you want to talk about workers' rights and decent pay and being able to afford a house, you cannot do anything without a good working economy. And as much as Labour wants to talk about the welfare state, all of that, we are living beyond our means, and the economy has ground to a halt. That needs to be sorted out. Immigration, legal and illegal, is an insult. It's a slap in the face to people that actually value this country, that work hard, that just want to take care of their families. And it has nothing to do with sort of the cultural racism or anything like that. It's just a matter of fairness. And I think that really cuts through. When people see all of these random men, but predominantly men from God knows where, coming across the channel on these boats, it eats at something at the heart of British identity, because it's not the fact that we're not generous or anything like that, but it's unfair and it's ridiculous.
I think the point about fairness is key. Andy, I did mention this on X today, that if we'd known in the aftermath of 7/7, of course we're coming up to the 20th anniversary of those Islamist atrocities. At 20 years on, You know, we'd have open borders, basically. We'd have mass migration. We'd have no serious government strategy for integration. We'd have sectarianism in the House of Commons, with Muslim MPs showing more interest in building an airport in Pakistan than what's going on here in Britain. I think we'd be shocked if you'd said that to us 20 years ago, that this is going to be where Britain is. And that's partly why reform's doing so well, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's just because of migration. I think that kind of idea of normal people being pushed out and not being focused on is certainly part of it. But, you know, you can't blame 1 year of the Labour government for that. Do you know what I mean? They were in power for, what, 3 years, and then 1 year now. For a predominant amount of time, it was the Tories.
I would say I'm the last person, I think, in Westminster to defend the Tory record. Well, anyway, we're going to carry on the debate because after the break, the Home Office is in total chaos. They admit that they've got no idea how many immigrants are overstaying their visas. Yet another sign that this Labour government has completely lost control of our borders and our country. I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now, experts are warning that lithium suppliers will not keep up with the demand for electric cars.
Yeah, researchers say domestic lithium production could grow as much by about 10 times what it currently is by 2030, but will still fall short of demand.
So this morning we're asking whether Labour's green car policy is unachievable.
This policy tells you everything you need to know about net zero. This isn't about giving people free choices about the technologies they want to use. This is about saying we're going to have mandatory targets. It's a sad indictment on our country if we've just normalised the government making these fundamental decisions for people's lives. The CEBR has warned that this policy might cost the country. That's rigid targets for battery electric vehicles, known as the ZEV mandate. 80% of all vehicles will have to be electric vehicles by 2030, rising to 100% by 2035. And that policy is expected to cost £400 billion to the UK economy. And of course, car makers as well have warned that this policy is not achievable.
The latest stats say 47% of vehicles sold in Britain are now EVs. We're halfway there after just 2 years of the electric mandate. We've another 5 years to go. It's speeding up. And this charge that lithium, we're going to have a shortage of lithium, is nonsense. What it says is that there may be the consumption of lithium is increasing, so the domestic production will not be sufficient, but there's plenty in the world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Well, it looks like the Home Office is completely rudderless. A damning new report by MPs has found that they don't even know how many people are leaving the United Kingdom once their visas expire, or indeed how many are staying here illegally. The Public Accounts Committee says the government has failed to collect even the most basic data, like how many migrant workers actually go home when their visas run out. It's funny, isn't it? Misinformation. We're all accused of suffering from misinformation, but even the government itself cannot collect the most basic information about what's going on in this country. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined by Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. Stephen, good to have you on the show. What is the takeaway point for you here when it comes to this sort of, seems to me, utter incompetence in the Home Office?
Matt, good evening, and thank you for inviting me on the show. I think one of the key points is not just the incompetence that you've mentioned, but actually the continued incompetence of the Home Office in being able to collect data, not only of those who are leaving our country, but those coming into our country, and those now that we now know from this very important piece of committee work that shows that they don't know how many visas people who are leaving on visas. As you know, and through your research and the research that we've done, it was only a few years ago that we identified that the Home Office was not able to collect appropriate data of people who are actually entering the country as well as leaving the country. Remember, they used to have only clipboards counting people as they went out. Now we've had a small change in the assessment by the ONS. But overall, what this brings together is a lack of the ability of the Home Office in a day when we've got AI and massive levels of data technology from big companies that can collect data that are not able to tell us how many people are coming into the country, how many people are leaving, and now how many people are overstaying their visas. Total incompetence throughout government.
Stephen, this is maybe an unfair question, but do you think the Home Office is actually fit for purpose? Because we're obviously going into some kind of regime change after the next general election, if you look at the polls. Is there not a case to be made now that actually the Home Office needs to be, completely shut down, and we need something else that is much more effective at collecting this basic information? Lots of people out there, lots of viewers of this show, utterly frustrated with the inability of the Home Office to process asylum applications, to help control our borders, and now even to tell us who is or who is not in the country.
I think there's a really key point now that the Home Office has gone beyond the stage when it can exist in its current form. I, for one, have argued for many years that it needs to be broken up, not only to deal with immigration, but actually to remove policing from the Home Office into a separate department that deals with policing and particularly prisons, because that's a separate issue that needs to be dealt with. And then you need to have within the Home Office a team, if you're looking at reform or whoever is kind of providing the information that works for them, an organisation that breaks down the legal issues relating to asylum. Firstly, we should be considering amending or removing ourselves from the International Convention on Refugees, because that's no longer fit for purpose, removing ourselves from the European Court of Human Rights, amending or leaving the Human Rights Act, looking into immigration regulations, which allow 75% of all asylum claims to be done discretionary on the basis of our common law. Therefore, having repeal acts that look into the common law as well, and amending and removing many of the contentious clauses in immigration regulations. That's
just to be clear. So when Labour say, well, we're returning record numbers of people, the point I often make is, well, yes, but at the very same time, Labour are approving, and the Home Office are approving the vast majority of asylum claims. That's correct, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. And this was an issue that was started under Rishi Sunak. I call it the great con, the sleight of hand. There are two massive sleight of hands that are about to happen in this country. The one is that the Labour Party will say that we're getting less and less people going into hotels because actually they're approving more people for indefinite right to remain here much more quickly than under Rishi Sunak, because they've increased the levels of what they call discretionary right to remain. This isn't asylum, as we know it under the Refugee Convention or ECHR. It's because they've changed the rules. And the second, which I think is going to be the most vehement element of the changes that they're doing by sleight of hand, is moving people out of hotels into local authority accommodation, encouraging
HMOs.
Companies like Serco to buy up apartments, putting ordinary
multiple occupants. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw this firsthand in Runcorn and Helsby, where you have these 3-bedroom homes in quiet streets with 20 or 30 mainly young men who have come over on the small boats living in them. And the truly outrageous part of this is that the government are using taxpayers' money to bankroll private companies to offer landlords more favourable contracts for illegal migrants than they're offering to the British people. So we're using the British people's money to outbid them in their own housing market.
And this is the disgrace. This, I think, is actually even worse than what's happening with hotels. Only a few days ago, I was contacted by one property developer who's refusing to accept it. He owns 10 apartments, renting at £1,500. He's been offered £2,000 per month for each of those 10. That's £20,000 a month. They're going to give the company an offering him 5 years up front for all 10 of those properties. And not only this, at the moment, he's impacted by all the Labour Party's policies on landlords, all the new rules. He will not have to face any of those rules if he took this large sum of over £1 million. It's a scam in which the taxpayer is being used to fund asylum seekers at the cost and detriment of ordinary working people in this country who not only have to pay their taxes, but now can't afford the homes to live in.
Indeed. Well, that was Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, doing incredibly important work and telling it as it is. Thank you to Stephen. I'm joined now by my panel, political commentator and trade unionist Andy Twelves and columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Andy, if I can start with you, how is it that a party that says it's on the side of the working class, says it's on the side of hard-working British people, but at the same time presides over what you've just heard there from Stephen Wolfe, allowing private sector companies to basically outbid the British people in their own housing market?
I think it's ridiculous. I agree that it's wrong. To be honest, I can't defend the Labour Party on that. But one thing I do struggle is a bit of the cognitive dissonance about how you're really on the side of the British tenants, on the British working people in the housing market, but then really kind of anti the new legislation that will make renters and tenants' lives easier and make it a lot better for them to rent in the UK. So I do struggle with the cognitive dissonance of 1 second, when it's a migrant taking these HMOs that exploit people, yes, really good for British tenants, we're really on their side. But then when it's bad landlords getting regulations put on them, we're not on their side at all. The landlords have to be able to do what they want. I don't get the cognitive dissonance.
I don't think it has to be either or. The illegal immigrants have no right to anything in Britain. They have no right to any public funds or anything that is provided by the British taxpayer, which should be for British people. So I guess you're comparing apples and oranges. Yes, we want tenants to be able to have rights and to be able to live comfortably in Britain. But that has nothing to do with people that have no right to be here whatsoever. And this idea that, they're asylum seekers. Once you enter Britain illegally, you are an illegal immigrant. It doesn't matter what you do when you get here, you are an illegal immigrant. If you wanted to claim asylum, you could have got a student visa or found a legal way to come to Britain.
But they chose
to do that. They chose, instead of applying for a visa through the normal route, they chose to pay people smugglers £3,000 on average to enter this country illegally. So I think all the good graces that we should have for people should be women and girls stuck under the Afghan regime, not men that have the funds to cross our borders and enter illegally. I'm sorry, I cannot recognise the Labour Party because this, at least for me personally as a voter, I cannot see any sort of similarities between the Labour Party of Michael Foot, for example, those kinds of titans of political discourse and statesmen, and what we have now. It's completely shambolic. I mean, forget about the fact that they should be on the side of the working people. They should be on the side of the British public, period. This is completely ridiculous. I don't understand how they can make any case that they actually like this country and they're in favour of it when people that have not paid into this system, that are not invested in Britain, are getting the red carpet rolled out to them, and yet somehow they're on the side of the UK. They're not on the side of anyone here.
I don't agree with the principle of paying in to get out.
Well, no, but they have no investment here, none whatsoever. Not born here, not have any rights to be here.
I don't think that's the principle of it, though. I think if you're a disabled person who's never paid tax,
no, but they're invested in this country. They are a British citizen. I'm sorry, your value to this country isn't just your ability to pay tax. Well, the point that I was making is British people that are actually invested in this country. That's the difference.
Why is that silly, Andy? Because if I've paid in to the welfare state and I've supported the system through taxation, then I should have a right to public services. If I've never paid into anything at all, why should I have a right to welfare and public services?
Well, if you're not able to work, if you're chronically disabled your entire life.
A minority.
Well, a small percentage, but also their parents and their ancestors would have contributed to that collective pot. If somebody comes from outside of the country, has never contributed to the public purse, but then all they do is take out of the public purse, how do you sustain a social contract?
They're not allowed to work. But
Lots of people. We know illegal migrants come to work within minutes of arriving.
But they're not legally allowed to work.
No, but hold on. It's
They're
not even about the work.
allowed to
This is the fallacy of the left. It's, they're not allowed to work.
Well, they're
the
not.
second you
That's
hold
the law.
on, no. So Britain is not just a place where people work. It's not just this library of jobs, right? The second you step foot here, when you use our roads, when you use education, which many of these people do get access to, council-funded education, when you use the NHS, when you use anything on this island, you are taking away from it because you have not put a penny in it and you are not invested in it. That's the point. It's not just about working. If they're here, if they're getting food 3 times a day, if they're getting stipends from the council, which they do on a weekly basis, that is taking out of the system that they have no business taking out of.
Well, I should say that we have a response from the Home Office tonight, who have given us this statement, which I'm just going to read out. This report affirms again that the previous government's decision 5 years ago to relax visa controls on skilled workers helped to drive an unprecedented increase in the UK's level of net migration, with almost 1 million people coming here in 2023. Of course, that figure now is 431,000 net migration coming into the UK every year, equivalent to adding a city the size of Coventry to our country every year. Well, coming up after the short break, Jeremy Corbyn is back. He's launched a new party, and it is bad news for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. But get this, I think it's very good news for Nigel Farage and Reform, and I'll tell you why in 2 minutes.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
With low pressure close to the UK this weekend, higher pressure is expected throughout the Mediterranean. Very hot in Croatia and across parts of Greece. Less breezy through the Greek islands, but less hot for Italy compared with recent days. Still some thunderstorms inland through Italy, across the Alps, and more especially northern parts of Spain and the Pyrenees, seeing some intense thunderstorms. Breezy through the Canary Islands, and really it's more of the same over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Things are definitely looking a bit wetter for many this weekend than they have been recently. It's because there's a weather system which has already brought quite a bit of rain across many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. It's now feeding into northern and western parts of England and Wales, and that whole system's going to continue to feed its way across the whole country as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow. As a result, there will be a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain for many, perhaps just some eastern parts of England and Scotland staying largely dry. There will also be some blustery winds with all that unsettled weather. Well, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount. Most places holding up well into the teens. As we go through tomorrow morning then, a bit of a cloudy, damp start for many places. Across many areas of the south, there will be some outbreaks of rain, could be quite persistent across parts of Devon and Cornwall and also South Wales. Further north, and it's a bit of a west-east split, quite damp across parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England and much of central and western Scotland. Further east, a greater chance of some drier and perhaps even brighter weather, and that's the theme that we'll take through the day really. Western areas will always see the wettest weather because that's where the rain is coming from. Rainfall totals across western Scotland continuing to build up. Could be some travel disruption, maybe even a bit of flooding here. And also in the southwest, need to bear in mind there could be some heavier bursts of rain for a time. All the while towards the east, a greater chance of staying dry, a bit more sunshine breaking through here and some higher temperatures, albeit temperatures generally down a little bit compared to some recent days. Then as we go into Sunday, yes, there may be some bright or sunny spells around, but on the whole, it's again looking pretty cloudy and there will be some showery bursts of rain, some heavier bursts perhaps across some parts of the southeast. Monday may still bring a few showers for some of us, but there does look likely to be a more drier trend as we go through next week and perhaps warming up too.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens. Opinion and debate And of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight, right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, another tremor has gone off in British politics because Jeremy Corbyn is back and he's gearing up to launch a brand new hard-left political party to challenge the Labour Party across the country. His ally, Zara Sultana, has just quit the Labour Party and she says she's going to co-lead this new movement with Jeremy Corbyn, although he hasn't quite confirmed that yet. But let's not forget, we have seen plenty of breakaway groups in British politics before. Just think about Change UK, the True and Fair Party, the Climate Party. All of those, of course, fizzled out. Even so, this could still split the left-wing vote in this country, just as Reform UK is shaking up the right. And it could mean real trouble for Keir Starmer come election day. Well, I'm joined to discuss this by my panel, political commentator and trade unionist Andy Twelves and columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Esther, this is bad news for Keir Starmer and wonderful news for Nigel Farage, is it not?
If it sticks. So in politics, there's always that caveat, if it sticks, if it actually works out. So what we have to question is actually the credibility of this new party. Does Jeremy Corbyn still have the sway and the cachet that he had back in 2015?
But it isn't just Corbyn, is it? It's Corbyn, Sultana, and let's say the Gaza Muslim vote.
Exactly, but they already have their own sort of MPs and
who are in alliance with Corbyn.
Exactly, but they're already enfranchised in one way. The whole Zara Sultana doesn't have much credibility as an MP. Jeremy Corbyn is a household name. He's been in politics for a while. He was leader of the Labour Party. The only way this could be bad news is to see which kinds of groups will flock to it. And we have to wait and see. I mean, it looks like Zara Sultana kind of jumped the gun by announcing this party anyway, because Jeremy Corbyn seemed a bit lukewarm, saying we're still in discussion, which is not how you want to start.
He has issued a statement today saying, you know, he basically is going to support and be involved in this movement.
Yeah.
Andy Twelves, is this not going to become a gateway for Islamist sectarianism in British politics? You're going to see a lot of Muslim votes in this country being organised along religious lines and along the lines of issues like Gaza, as we've seen since the 2024 general election?
I don't think so. I think I think it's on that caveat as well that Esther raised that if it sticks. Like, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, he's been an MP since the 80s.
Yeah.
He was leader of the opposition for 5 years, and it was a hard 5 years. It was 2 general elections, the Brexit years. Like, he'll be tired out. I don't know if he's got the legs in him to keep going on frontline politics. To be honest,
my gut instinct here is if you take the pro-Gaza vote, the student vote, the hard left vote, and you throw it behind not just Corbyn, but those independent Muslim MPs, people like Sultana, maybe, who knows, people that would defect over from the Greens, maybe a couple of other Labour MPs, let's see. This has got enough momentum behind it to get 10% or thereabouts of the national vote.
I mean, it definitely could. I think what was telling was, I think it was John McDonnell, Diane Abbott and Clive Lewis all issued a statement yesterday saying that they weren't going to join this party, despite 2 of them still being suspended from the Labour whip. I think the person that this will do most damage to is Zach Polanski, who's running for leader of the Green Party. He's running on a very eco-populist, very kind of left-wing populist platform. I think this is going to do the most damage to his voter base, to be honest.
And what incentive do Green voters now have to defect to this new party that we actually don't really know what they're about? They could be anything. They could be the pro-Gaza party. They could be the eco-nut party. They could be like literally anything. They could be young, dissatisfied, basically student activist party. They could be anything. Well, they could be the ultra-feminist party.
I would put it to you, Esther Kraku, that the analysis done last year on the independent Muslim candidates, I think we have 5, suggested that if the Muslim vote was organised along specifically sectarian lines, that it could cost the Labour Party somewhere around 36 seats. So if this movement becomes a proxy for Muslim sectarianism, then it could become significant.
Yes, but closer to an election, people's hierarchy of needs tend to shift. So if these people also think that actually I'm going to...
Well, that didn't happen last year, did it?
Well, not necessarily, but again, closer to an election, people are going to think, if I'm going to lose my benefits, for example, who am I most likely to vote for?
5 seats voted for candidates that had nothing to do with the mainstream parties.
Exactly.
And a lot of Labour MPs experienced harassment and intimidation along the way.
4 years down the line, will people still be voting just for Gaza, basically? I don't know. I'm not sure. There's a lot riding on it. So, again, if it sticks, if it happens to garner momentum, if it happens to chip off support from the Greens and the Lib Dems or whoever, then we will see. But at the moment, it looks like a messy hodgepodge.
Well, a messy hodgepodge maybe. After the break, we're going to be turning back to another messy hodgepodge because we're going to be looking at whether France has finally stepped up to stop the small boat crossings. After we've been handing them hundreds of millions of pounds, there is a new strategy underway in the channel today. I'm going to be telling you what it is, and we're going to be debating, will it work? I'll see you in 2 minutes.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody, to State of the Nation on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, for the first time, French police have started puncturing migrant boats at sea in a dramatic new tactic backed by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, and indeed what many would say is common sense. Officers armed with knives waded into the water on Friday, slashing the dinghies, so dozens of illegal migrants had to turn back to shore. It's understood this is just the start of French trials to work out the best way to stop the small boats from leaving and arriving in this country illegally. After years of empty words and hundreds of millions of pounds being handed over, are we finally seeing some real action? Well, to discuss this, there's one man in the country who knows more about this issue than anybody else, friend of the channel and the show, former UK Border Force Director General, Tony Smith, who's also written an excellent book about his experiences, I know because I've just finished reading it. Tony, thank you for coming onto the show. Is this going to work?
Short answer is, Matt, I don't know, really. The cynic in me suggests that it just so happened that a BBC crew was on the right beach at the right time this morning, and when it just so happened that a French police crew with knives managed to jump in the water and cut open a dinghy, and we're told this is a major breakthrough. You know, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what deal they're doing with the French. You know, we know all about this one-to-one deal that's going to be announced next week. Macron's over here. I've had media...
Well, we've got the state visit, haven't we? Big state visit coming.
Exactly, Matt. You know, and I've had media bids coming out my ears already about what's going to be announced. I don't know. I haven't got any insider information. I mean, the true figure is the arrivals figure, Matt. That's what we need to keep our feet on the ground, excuse the pun. The proof will be in how many people are still arriving on the boats. All of these other announcements, all of these other proposals and plans, we've got a measurement. It's how many people arriving. And we know...
that's just surpassed 170,000. 170,000 since 2018. We're up nearly 50,000 since Labour came to power. Numbers never been higher.
Yeah, so you need to keep reporting that, Matt. I know you will. I know you will. But that is the yardstick. If you're working in the Home Office, in the Border Force, and you're told to stop the boats, that's what you're going to get measured by. How many boats are we getting? How many people are we getting? How many migrants are we getting? The whole strategy is about reducing that number. And we haven't seen a reduction yet. Now, I want to give them a fair chance. I mean, this is the first time we've seen some of these pictures of the French getting their feet wet. We've heard all kinds of stories about, you know, new French patrol boats are going to be coming out to stop these dinghies from launching, some kind of a returns deal, third country, which I've been advocating from day one. It's safe third, yeah, great. But what are the strings and what's in it for the French? And why would they suddenly do a deal with us and say, with a new government, and say, all right, then we'll have a safe third, when they weren't prepared to do that for the last 7 years, unless we are saying, well, actually, we're going to start letting a lot of people into this country, Matt, that we don't have to, that are in France now. We're going to open the doors for them as well. That's what worries me.
Well, I mean, the thing I'm wondering is all these people that are not going to be getting into the boats coming over to the UK, so they'll be staying on the beaches. In other words, they'll be staying in France. What's the incentive for the French to do this unless behind the doors, behind closed doors, we have agreed to take a large number of people from France?
Yeah, and that's what worries me, Matt, as well. You know, I've heard you and other commentators say, well, look, you know, these negotiations with the EU are always tough. But, you know, we seem to have given away quite a lot on the fishing. There's a lot of other things we think we've given away. The government spin machine is in overdrive. I think they're in real trouble on this, Matt, because they've got to show something. My worry is that we are going to see spin here and we're going to sell ourselves down. I hope I'm wrong, that we're going to sell ourselves down the river. We're going to end up still seeing boat arrivals, but we're also going to be opening up routes to people that don't currently need to come, and we'll end up with the worst of both worlds. But I hope I'm wrong. I'd like to be optimistic. You know, I'm seeing...
Well, thank you
Let's just hope it works, Matt. You know?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks. Sorry, Tony. We're up against the clock here. Thank you to Tony Smith for joining us. I just want to get a view from our panel, political commentator Andy Twelves and Esther Kraku. Andy, good news for the hard-working majority of British people out there who want the boats to stop, or is this, as Tony suggests, maybe a gimmick with some detail that is yet to be disclosed?
In fairness, if it is a gimmick that works, I'm happy for that. Do you know what I mean? I think we've sent
enough money. But at what price?
If we've sent enough, well, I mean, we've sent a lot of money to the French.
500 million,
If it works, if it stops the arrivals coming, I would be happy with that. To be honest, I think, you know, the French, that clearly worked. If you stab in the boats can't come over.
But what Tony is saying, and I think he's right to say it, is the French wouldn't be doing this unless we have made some kind of agreement to take in people that they are either going to now hold in France or have already got in France from somewhere else. What is the incentive for the French to do this? Because it isn't just the money. They've had money for years. There must be some kind of deal being struck behind closed doors. And what Tony Smith is saying, who's been right all along during this crisis, is probably going to involve us taking more people while pretending that we're fixing the boats.
So I think there'll probably be an agreement of having a processing centre set up in France. Then we can take legitimate asylum seekers. But I don't think for any moment that with a legitimate processing centre we'd see the numbers that we are illegally.
Esther Craig.
So the thing is, I don't understand why we've kind of gone on this rampage against the French. Oh, we're sending the French all this money. They're not doing anything. If someone is providing you a service that you're not happy with, you go to you try something else. It's not our fault. It's not the French's fault that our politicians are not very clever. We've sent money to the Belgians as well. People don't understand. And Belgium has done a very good job actually intercepting people coming across from Belgium here. But we don't seem to be getting those results from the French. Does that mean we should blame the French? No, we just have to try something different. I don't understand why the Tory government, the last Tory government, spent all that money hiring Australian consultants to basically mimic what they managed to do back then in 2012 with bipartisan support without, the help of the French or the Indonesians or anyone else. They did it by themselves. Why did we spend all that money if we weren't willing to do what they said? And so at the end of the day, what the incentive is for the French to finally do this, I guess Macron's coming over and them probably getting their ear talks off by irate civil servants. But I don't think that's enough.
But Andy, we were just discussing in the break, it might also perhaps be reflecting the influence of some advisors around Keir Starmer who are saying to the government, look, if you don't actually start to get on top of the issues that are really dominating the minds of ordinary British people, not necessarily Labour MPs, and this government is going to be stuffed. Could you tell us a bit more about some of those leaks and notes that have been coming out of the Labour government?
Yes, there's a great scoop by Tim Shipman in The Spectator today. There was a leaked memo that Morgan McSweeney had written, and it was May 4th, 2028, the path to victory or something like that. And it basically outlined the 5 issues.
Suggesting an election in 28.
28, a four-year incumbency, and then going early. But I think the idea is that they might be looking towards 2029 because it's been a hard first year. But there is that kind of the 5 issues that British people care about and why, the insurgency of reform is succeeding, because...
And immigration is
almost in every single one of those points. It's the golden thread throughout them all. It's the idea that Labour are becoming that kind of incumbent government, becoming the establishment that is allowing Reform UK to take the charge.
Labour has to defend Morgan McSweeney like their lives depend on it, because he's probably one of the only people whispering in Keir Starmer's ear that actually gets it. And within the Labour Party, he's seen as quite controversial because he is
because he's a fairly normal person.
He understands the working class. I mean, he is what a Labour politician, should be. Instead of these M25 elites that are busy drinking soy lattes from Starbucks, they don't get the country, but he does. And so he's the only person that Keir Starmer is actually paying attention to, that he really needs to defend like his life depends on it, or else his premiership is toast.
I completely agree.
OK, well, the debate over the small boats and indeed what is happening on our borders will continue, especially right here where we will keep watching it very closely. Now, before I leave you with Patrick Christys tonight, I've got some exciting news to share with you. I've been presenting State of the Nation for quite a while, but now things are going to change. Make sure you tune in next week for my brand new show, Friday Night with Matt Goodwin from 8 p.m. I'm going to be bringing you the biggest and the hottest takes of the week in the political world. We're going to be calling it as it is. We're going to be taking on the establishment. We're going to be challenging some of the misleading narratives and the gaslighting and the lies in Westminster. And we're going to be representing, goodness me, God forbid, the forgotten majority of hard-working, law-abiding, tax-paying British people who have had enough of the utter carnage and chaos that we see around us today. That's with me, Matt Goodwin, 8 p.m. next Friday. But let's turn to Patrick Christys right now.
Well, hello, everybody. Who want wonderful live studio audience? Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, look. Oasis might be playing in Cardiff, but this really is the best show in town tonight, I think. We've got loads coming your way. So we've had a year of Sir Keir Starmer, haven't we? Well, there we go. Also, Jeremy Corbyn setting up a new party. Jezbollah, anyone? There we are. So we'll be talking about that. Anyone brave enough to admit that they're on the fat jabs? No? Didn't think so. Oh, one lad there. There we go. 2 people are all coming out of the woodwork now. We're going to be talking about all of this and much more. Stay tuned.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Things are definitely looking a bit wetter for many this weekend than they have been recently. It's because there's a weather system which has already brought quite a bit of rain across many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. It's now feeding into northern and western parts of England and Wales, and that whole system